To your seats, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna talk a little slowly here. Okay, they're closing the doors. Very good. Okay, welcome back. As you obviously could tell, there was a much longer movie originally than Journey into Fear, and I did a disservice because I did not give any credit to Norman Foster, who actually was the actual director of that film, most of the film. And Norman Foster was a protege of Orson Welles. He had been an actor and was actually married to the actress Claudette Colbert in the 1930s and became a protege of Orson Welles and was one of the people also involved in the ill-fated production It's All True in South America, but he was directing this film. Welles and Joseph Cotten wrote the screenplay together, and Welles designed the movie. And then, and then he went off to South America and left the production in charge of Norman Foster. And George Schaefer, as I said, was fired from RKO while that was happening. And the new regime just pulled the plug on the whole thing, and Welles had to come back, and they tacked on that whole ending. Obviously, when he gets off the ship, there was a whole other 20 or 30 minutes of movie, and then it just lightning strikes, and then he's reunited with his wife, and they concocted that whole ending scene at the hotel sort of on the fly, and had that, they kissed it off with that ridiculous Ruth Warwick line at the end. Howard, you come down right now from that ledge. I think you could get a real sense of exactly how much of his heart was in the film at that point. Okay, now, we have gone from the ridiculous to the sublime. I know if it is not rated from the British Film Institute as the greatest British film ever made, it is certainly in the top 3. The third man, John Noe, who's a longtime fan of Noir City here, told me that this was the film that got him into film noir when he was very young. And it's the film that not only gets a lot of people into film noir, but makes a lot of people want to become filmmakers. I mean, this is an extraordinary motion picture. It speaks directly to a theme that you're going to see in a lot of the movies that we're showing in the series this year, which is the pall cast over the world in the aftermath of World War II. That is specifically what The Third Man is about. It is a producer's film, and Alexander Korda, the producer of this movie, does not get enough credit in a lot of the scholarly works about the film. It was his idea. He brought Graham Greene into the project and said, I want you to go to Vienna and come up with a story that speaks to what's happening in Europe in the aftermath of the war. Graham Greene, quite simply, is one of the most significant writers of the 20th century, arguably England's greatest novelist of the 20th century. During his career, he wrote what he considered to be his big books, and then he wrote his entertainments. And today, you really can't tell them apart. And late in his life, he kind of admitted, I thought I was slumming when I wrote books like A Gun for Sale, which was made in the movie This Gun for Hire, or when I wrote, you know, Quiet American or Our Man in Havana, books like this. He wrote The End of the Affair, The Heart of the Matter, The Human Factor. He was just a really prolific and extraordinary writer. This is an original work of his. Korda asked him to write an original screenplay. The novella that resulted, The Third Man by Graham Greene, is actually just a novelization of his screenplay. Just like in Journey into Fear, the two characters, I mean, Joseph Cotten is in both of these movies, and in neither of the original books, Journey into Fear or the screenplay that Greene wrote for this movie, is that central character supposed to be an American. He's supposed to be British in Journey into Fear and in The Third Man. But Korda was interested in making a big international success out of this movie, and so he co-produced it with David O. Selznick. And what David O. Selznick brought to the film specifically is Joseph Cotten and Alida Valli, the co-stars. Both of them were under contract to David O. Selznick. Now, Orson Welles and Joseph Cotten were two peas in a pod since like 1933 when they worked together on radio for the first time. They did everything together. They did all the radio shows together. They did the stage shows together. When they came to Hollywood together, Joseph Cotten was in Citizen Kane. He was in Magnificent Ambersons. He was in Journey into Fear. They were like twins joined at the hip. But adding incredible significance to The Third Man is the fact that after Welles was terminated from the contract at RKO, and he was sort of persona non grata in Hollywood, he and Welles had a creative split. There was no real animosity, it's just they went their separate ways. And after he directed Lady from Shanghai, he was done. Orson Welles was done in Hollywood, and he went to Europe to seek the continuation of his career. And he was kind of lost out there in Europe, trying to salvage what was left of his career, while Joseph Cotten signed an exclusive deal with David O. Selznick. You see this reflected in The Third Man. The fact that Joseph Cotten is this American in Europe trying to find his former best friend. And so the fact that they cast Orson Welles in the part has great significance for the two men themselves. But Korda and Carol Reed, the director, specifically wanted British actors to play these two roles. But when Selznick got involved, it became something else entirely. It's really interesting to note that Korda wanted Cary Grant to play the Joseph Cotten role and wanted Noel Coward to play Harry Lime in the film, which I actually think is kind of brilliant in a way. I mean, he's not Orson Welles, but the character of Harry Lime, which is one of the great characters in movie history, Graham Greene actually based the character on a man that he knew because Greene was peripherally involved in the British Secret Service, the SIS, and he knew a man named Tim Philby, who is the most notorious double agent in British history. And that is the basis for the character of Harry Lime. And Graham Greene based this on, I was actually friends with the worst double agent spy in British history, and he remained friends with him. Yeah, right after it came out that he was a traitor, Greene actually couldn't figure out a reason to really dislike him. And you see this reflected completely in The Third Man. It is what the film is about. Carol Reed, the director, had worked with Greene before this on a film called The Fallen Idol. He was a protege of a very famous and now forgotten British popular novelist named Edgar Wallace, who was really one of the most well-read writers in the world, most popular writers in the world in the 20s and 30s. Most people today know him as the guy who was the co-author of King Kong. But Edgar Wallace was immensely prolific, and Carol Reed learned about storytelling from him, and this is clearly Carol Reed's masterpiece. And to not, there's no question that Orson Welles' influence, when the subject of casting came up and Reed realized that Orson Welles was in Europe and he was available, he had no bones about it. He told Korda, Orson Welles is going to be Harry Lime. This is going to be spectacular. And you can absolutely see the influence that Welles' filmmaking style had on Carol Reed in this film. There's nothing quite like it. I mean, the way this film is shot is so beautiful. It almost defines the noir look. And the editing is incredibly modern and sophisticated for the time. There aren't too many other films of the period that were edited quite like this. The other totally unique thing about this is the score. When Carol Reed and company arrived in Austria to make the film, they were greeted at the airport by a band to welcome their arrival. And one of the instruments in that band was a zither played by a man named Anton Karas. And when Carol Reed heard the sound, he said, that's the score of the film. And he actually had Karas move into his apartment in Vienna and play during the production of the movie so he could absorb this sound. And it became arguably the most famous film score ever, really, because the idea that a film score would become a huge popular hit just in the music, No lyrics or anything. There's no best song here. But the Third Man theme became an international sensation, and Anton Karas went from playing in a band at the airport to actually having international concert tours where he would play the zither. And this, honestly, it gets in your head. You people are in trouble because you're gonna be hearing this damn, theme to the Third Man for the rest of the weekend. So, yeah, thank me for that. But it is an absolutely brilliant film with one of the great final shots in movie history. And what can I say? You made the right choice tonight. This is arguably one of the greatest films ever made, and the first time I've shown it at Noir City, Seattle. So thanks very much. I hope I see you all back here in the coming days. It's going to be a lot of fun. So enjoy The Third Man.